disgusting piece of trash adventurer who was kicked from his party group for hiding his SS rank power. You see, Nick was an orphan boy who was raised by Argus, his former party leader and adoptive father. Argus always saw Nick's potential and trained him to be a swordsman. Yet, Nick was only a kid and couldn't beat Argus, who was only holding a stick. But years later, Nick got his place in Argus Adventurer Group and managed to land a beautiful girlfriend. Yet, all that training went for nothing because Nick became a soft boy. Not only she did cheat on him, but she also scammed his pockets into poverty. Nick has been living in Labyrinth City, which was named after its maze-like architecture. Despite the various chances it provides, the city is extremely unsafe and perilous for all of its citizens. All of this has a big impact on Nick, so he chooses to become a fan of a group of young idols and devotes his entire admiration to this idol gathering. We must first go back in time. So, we can see that Nick still has a hole in his heart since he doesn't comprehend why Argus decided to kick him out of the adventurous group. According to Argus, this choice was made because Nick lacked the spirit of an adventurer. Furthermore, Argus believed Nick had become arrogant and began to issue instructions to everyone, which irritated him and led to his decision. While Nick remains depressed, reflecting on the events of the past, a girl arrives and attempts to cheer him up. However, he tells her to leave with a contemptuous gesture. Nonetheless, the persistent girl keeps on talking to him and presents him with a ticket that appears to be an admission pass to the idol event, claiming to be a rookie idol who works hard. Despite his confusion, Nick asks the girl why she chose to talk to him. She explains that it's part of her job as an idol to inspire others, so she hands him the ticket, hands him her umbrella, and goes, leaving Nick pleased but assuring her that he won't attend any of the events. However, the girl claims not to have heard him and informs Nick that she always expects him. So Nick examines the ticket and ultimately decides to go. That is how he winds up at the concert with Agate, and in the end, he does not regret going. He also purchased numerous souvenirs for sale at the site and ran out of money for dinner. When he gets home, he realizes he needs to eat but has no money. As a result, the next day, he decides to go to a spot where newcomers congregate in order to find adventure groups. Nick intends to earn some money the honest way in order to support his wants while being an Agate fan. When he walks in, he runs into another guy and tries to catch his attention. An old man approaches the man, fully diverting his attention away from Nick and making him appear silly. As a result, he spends the entire day in that location with no success. Nick enters a small tavern, where he witnesses others enjoying their accomplishment in forming adventurer groups while eating some horrible food. Soon after, another group of 3 people arrives and see each other as if they were all strangers, who said anime couldn't dominate the world. Dive into the most comprehensive vehicle combat game ever made, War Thunder. Here, anime-themed vehicles have their place in reality too, with more than 2,000 tanks, planes, helicopters, and ships from the past 100 years up to the present to experience dynamic PvP battles. But the best part, you can download unlimited community-made skins of your waifu. But it only becomes more epic when you listen to your crew talking after downloading an anime voice pack. Imagine the feeling of flying the Japanese 1S helicopter Kisarazu, which can be purchased in-game featuring an anime design that is used in real life by the JSDF. So what are you waiting for? Play War Thunder now, for free, on PC, Xbox Series X and S, and PlayStation. And, if you're new or haven't played in the last 6 months, use the link below to claim a large bonus pack, including multiple premium vehicles, a premium account, exclusive 3D waifu Dakamakura, and much more. But hurry, it's available for a limited time. Furthermore, Nick notes that one of the trio's members is a girl who carries a staff adorned with an unusual and old stone. As a result, he comes to his own conclusions, speculating that she is a mage. The second member of the gang, on the other hand, is a cleric who is pretty drunk, and everything suggests that he ended himself in the area for mischievous girls owing to the fragrance of women's perfume, according to Nick. Finally, the third member is another Dragonkin girl. The waitress brings beer to the table at this moment, and Nick decides to raise a toast alone, reminiscing about his days as an adventurer, and with his self-interested ex-girlfriend. He tells himself that he will never make friends again since he can't trust anyone, despite the fact that Argus was correct in saying he lacks the spirit of an adventurer. The anime then tells us a little bit about each character's past, beginning with Tiana, the sorceress. Was shunned by her family and forced to flee. When she arrives at her new home, she discovers she is alone and must fend for herself. So she begins seeking out other sorcerer-adventurer groups that would accept her, but none do so without a letter of recommendation. She subsequently tries to get work as an assistant to a blacksmith, but she is also rejected there as well as in other locations. She finds an advertisement for horse racing bets while heading back home and wins her first bet. She does, however, decide to bet all of her winnings on another race, in which she loses everything. She is quite unhappy and disappointed, and she wonders what will happen next, so she sets out again to look for an opportunity. She comes upon an advertisement for adventure groups while walking down the street. Fled. This is how she ended up in the pub, the cleric's background, which is called Zem. He is from a well-known city with the Temple of the God Meddler, where he formerly worked. He was apparently appreciated by the city's citizens because of his enormous heart and generosity. Merle was a girl who gave him herbs on a regular basis. Merle arrived with more herbs one evening as he was working with them. Merle grasped his hand as he was going to pay her for the herbs and inquired whether he liked her. Zem said that she was still too young to be concerned about such matters. Furthermore, he had made a commitment to become a priest, so he couldn't date anyone. This irritated the girl, and she ran away, telling him how much she despised him. Merle, on the other hand, had a plan to exact revenge on Zem for rejecting her love. So, on a routine day, Zem was discussing his advancement to a high-ranking cleric with one of the town's citizens, and everything appeared good until the officials arrived to arrest him. Merle's strategy had worked. She had falsely accused Pointed because he was clearly innocent. They imprisoned him for 3 months before expelling him from the city. He then went to an old friend's place, who was completely unconscious of what had occurred, and they had a passionate night together. The next day, this woman handed him food and recommended that he travel to Labyrinth City and become an adventurer, as Zem seems to have confided in her about everything. She insisted that he begin his new life because he is a young man. She also provided him with some precious goods left behind by another tenant one random night to help him strengthen his cleric talents. Zem then began looking for a new life and forgot about his priestly calling. That's why he now enjoys drinking and being around ladies, and how he wounded himself in the pub with Nick and the others. However, Nick expresses uncertainty regarding the veracity of his account, implying that it could be drunken fiction. Zem says that after leaving the pub drinking, they all wake up the next day in Tiana's house with no idea how they got there. Tiana wants them to go because they are strangers. The others leave reluctantly, apologizing as they go. However, as they are about to leave, Nick encourages them to pause and offers to offer them moral support, just like the idol had done for him when he was depressed. He comes up with the idea of starting a group with the 4 of them after sharing some supportive comments. They all gather to officially formalize their group. They arrive at a place where they are received by a woman who recognizes Nick because he belonged to another group before. This woman claims that among them is a survivor who miraculously made it out of a Class C labyrinth. She is referring to Curran, the dragon girl. The woman then asks what name they want to give their group. After hearing what she said about Curran, Nick decides that their group will be called Survivors in honor of her. With this decision made, Nick, Curran, Tiana, and Zem officially form their group. Afterward, they have their first official meeting as adventurers, during which Nick proposes 3 rules to ensure their group's success. The first rule is that no one should interfere with each other's hobbies. The second rule is to manage the group's money well, and the third is to always return alive from their adventures. After laying out these 3 rules and stating that he will handle the group's finances under Tiana's supervision, with Curran as the treasurer, Nick commits to finding a safe to store their money. However, Zem protests a bit because he believes Nick would benefit the most from managing the money. This sparks a debate about trust among the group members, as they are all strangers and naturally wary of one another. Nevertheless, they all ultimately agree to put their pasts behind them and start trusting again, concluding their discussion. In a scene transition, the group of adventurers heads to a Class G labyrinth called the Viscous Aqueduct. Since they are a novice group, they must conquer 2 more labyrinths and defeat their bosses to advance to Class F rank. Nick explains to the others that it won't be too difficult to advance, as these Class G labyrinths serve as training grounds for adventurers to understand how labyrinths work. As they walk and talk, they encounter slime, which will be their first official prey. When they stop to observe it, Nick explains that although slimes appear harmless, they can consume anything in their path. Moreover, as they eat, they grow in size and have been known to become so large that they attack farms to devour cows. However, Nick explains how easy it is to control slimes by simply extracting the gem inside their bodies. After this, Nick's group continues to venture deeper into the labyrinth, reflecting on how great the idea of forming their group turned out to be. While they continue hunting slimes, Zem asks the others why monsters attack humans. Tiana responds that humans have become food for the monsters as a means to establish communication with them. but it has been largely futile. Zem, feeling somewhat uncomfortable about killing monsters, expresses his dissatisfaction with the situation. Nick advises them not to let their guard down, but as Tiana continues talking, a slime attacks from behind. Tiana becomes somewhat furious and attempts to attack the slimes, but due to her careless aim, her powers end up directed at Curran. This leads to an argument between the two girls, with Curran warning Tiana not to try attacking again, or else she won't take responsibility. Despite their dispute, they continue hunting slime, but the two girls remain quite upset with each other. Nevertheless, they reach the top of the labyrinth, and once again, Nick reminds them not to let their guard down. Meanwhile, something strange catches their attention. Further ahead, they spot a giant slime, and Nick warns them that it's the boss of the viscous aqueducts. They must act cautiously. However, Tiana rushes recklessly toward the giant slime, which is nothing new for Nick. Tiana unleashes a powerful spell against the giant slime, causing it to explode, fortunately without anyone getting hurt, and they manage to obtain the monster's gem. Afterward, as they leave the place, they take the opportunity to clean their clothes. Meanwhile, Nick seizes the moment to organize the group and assign roles to each member. He starts by introducing himself, explaining that he's proficient in combat and exploration but lacks knowledge of spells, healing, and heavy weapons. He suggests that the others do the same as a gesture of trust to understand each other's limits. They all share a common experience of being taken advantage of for their strengths, which makes it difficult for them to trust one another. Zem takes the chance to talk about his healing abilities, and Tiana stands up and faces Curran, offering an apology for what had happened earlier. She proceeds to explain her abilities, highlighting her vulnerability to close combat attacks and her inability to use weapons. Curran then shares her skills and limitations. Next, they head to the Goblin Forest. Nick explains that goblins are weak when alone but can be quite challenging in groups. They manage to defeat some goblins and seize their gems. Tiana informs the others that she can detect traces of magic, so she scans the area to locate more goblins. Nick tells them that it's not very common to be able to use this type of high-ranking magic. Still, Tiana informs them that she also detected a very powerful individual among the goblins. Nick then speculates that it could be an ogre or an evolved hobgoblin. They inquire about their odds of beating it, and Nick responds that they can, but they must work properly as a team to do so, otherwise they will all perish. So the only option is to go fight it. He adds that it will be up to him and Curran because all goblins are immune to magic. Tiana and Zem are only there to serve as distractions. Because of the monster's impenetrable skin, they assign the assignment to Curran, who is stronger. With this strategy in place, the gang of adventurers moves closer to the monster. Curran follows Nick's directions as they reach the ogre, taking the lead while he follows. While keeping their distance, Zem and Tiana offer some assistance. Meanwhile, Nick takes care of the lesser goblins while Curran charges her blade with a strong fire spell. She then rises into the skies before descending to destroy the beast with a decisive stroke. She then gets to work extracting all of the goblin's horns. When Curran bends down to look at a medal in her pocket, Nick inadvertently hits her, causing her to drop and break the medal. That medal has great significance for Curran's past. Turning to Nick's story, he's hunting for a comparable necklace to replace the one he accidentally damaged that belonged to Curran. He's perplexed as to why she didn't seem angry when it broke. Curran advised Nick not to worry about the necklace because she felt better without it. As a result, they continued to eat and spend time together. After that, they went back to the bar where it all started. They noticed that everyone in the room was now greeting them cheerfully. The party of explorers and Nick relaxed and enjoyed the time after they were seated at the table. Curran even performed some magic tricks for them. But just then, the girl who worked at the location where they had formed their group arrived and said she needed to speak with them discreetly. The purpose of this was to give them the opportunity to explore the Labyrinth of Bonds and obtain the Sword of Bonds, which the lady of that location was very interested in. So Nick's group accepted the difficult-to-refuse offer. Then Nick requested the lady describe the sword in further detail so they didn't bring the wrong one back. Nick also asked for a diagram of the labyrinth with indicated exploration zones. Nick, on the other hand, insisted that the lady guarantee a minimum price for the mission and provide everything in writing. That was the end of the matter. Nick and his team entered the labyrinth, but as they traveled, they discovered something strange. It appeared to have been designed by someone who had a significant interest in architecture, as the walls were highly modern, not to mention the automatic lights. To top it all off, the labyrinth was equipped with security cameras that were monitored by someone who had previously observed Nick's gang inside. The gang, however, remained unconcerned and continued walking until they hit a dead-end tunnel. At that time, Nick decided to move closer and discovered a secret entrance while being watched by the individuals behind the camera. They entered an odd area when they opened the door, but Nick chose to continue. Tiana, on the other hand, used her magical detection to check that there were no traps. She thought that someone was hiding with magic in order to avoid detection. So Nick and the others proceeded with caution, and when they arrived at the spot where the sword appeared to be, all of the lights in the room switched on, and a weird man began speaking. They didn't pay attention and instead focused on the sword, but they soon realized it wasn't whole, the blade was missing. Then someone suggested that it could be a magical sword whose blade is created by the wielder's magic. However, the voice kept speaking, and Nick told it to keep silent because their sole concern was the sword. So the voice says she is the sword they've been discussing, but no one pays attention to her. The sword then reveals that she is the sacred blade they are looking for and that her power can only benefit people who respect justice and friendship. She also claims to have been fashioned by Tarian's magical armory. Nick decides to put an end to the chit-chat and brings the sword to the lady to collect their reward. The sword, on the other hand, refuses to be exploited as a commodity and provides Nick's gang with the opportunity to wield it. In exchange, she will give them all of her power, preferring to be a mere storage object. When Nick takes the sword, however, a stringent security system is activated, bringing a massive golem to the area, ready to exterminate Nick and the group. Tiana casts a spell of crystal magic against the golem while Curran attacks. Nobody anticipated the golem shooting those crystals back at Curran, striking her and knocking her down. Zem then prepares to heal Curran with his magic. Meanwhile, Nick confronts the golem, but seeing how powerful it is, he orders the others to leave immediately. Nick keeps attacking the golem, but his attacks are ineffectual. So he asks the sword how to defeat it, and she responds that he must use her as a weapon to confront the monster. Nick takes his sword and wields it, successfully chopping off one of the golem's hands. However, defeating the golem would be difficult. It retaliates by tossing Nick into a pit and abandoning the rest of the group. Tiana freezes the golem, giving Curran time to find Nick. The golem thaws out unexpectedly, causing a significant challenge for Tiana and Zem because the golem is impervious to magic. However, the only plausible solution they see is to gain time by continually freezing the golem. Meanwhile, we travel to the location where Nick fell and was injured. Curran locates him, but he is buried beneath a pile of debris. They begin removing the stones together in order to find an exit. At this point, Nick apologizes once more for the jewelry incident. Curran argues that the necklace was part of a past she wished to leave behind but didn't have the confidence to do so for many reasons. So they reconnect, and Nick takes up the blade once more. Meanwhile, Tiana and Zem are struggling. Tiana informs Zem that she has had enough and that she cannot continue. She tells him to go into hiding while she buys some time. Nick and Curran appear as a single person, having united thanks to the power of the sword, just as they had committed themselves to death in that spot. That is how they defeated the golem. When they return later to give the sword to the woman, she pays them as agreed. The lady's assistant, on the other hand, observed that there was another person in the room. Kizuna, which means bond, was the boy, and he was now a new member of the survivors. They are all strolling and discussing what transpired in the labyrinth as they leave. It's at this time that they discover they've given the lady a phony sword, as there were fortunately many replicas in the area where they were confronted by the golem. They also learn that the sword has the ability to morph into a human and that the human is Kizuna. When they return to the group's home, they divide the money they made so that everyone can spend it however they see fit. Nick also gives Kizuna some money so that he can do anything he wants. He explains the rules to him as a new member of the survivors and then orders everyone to relax. He intends to attend a concert by his favorite agate and invites Kizuna, but the notion bores him, so he stays at home and reads a book. Tiana, on the other hand, tells Kizuna that she's going to watch the races and put some bets, and she invites him to join her. Kizuna accepts, and they proceed to the race venue. Tiana inquires as they travel about how he waited for thousands of years in that labyrinth without being discovered. Tiana claims that Kizuna's new survivor's name is Mop since he appears suspicious and may expose that he is the Sword of Bonds. That is how they enjoy racing and betting. The following day, all of Nick's group's explorers gathered for lunch. They notice how much Mop has enjoyed life since escaping the maze and how much he treasures his time with his new buddies. At that point, Nick pulls out the safe box he promised Curran so she can protect the group's savings. On the other side, he gives Zem the key to the box and Tiana and Abacus to manage the accounts. Each of them now has the means to carry out their responsibility of safeguarding the group's financial resources. As they begin to calculate, they they find that they only have a few cents left to save, which concerns the others. Nick, on the other hand, encourages them, stating that they must work more in order to raise their income. We return to Tiana's story, where she was collecting her belongings to depart after being ejected from the academy where they were both enrolled. As a departure gift, her teacher, who was also expelled due to a scandal involving Tiana, hands her a lighter. With a smile, he reminds her that they are now free and should live their lives as such, but she should never forget what he taught her. Tiana inquires as to why he seemed to be enjoying their departure, to which the teacher busts out laughing. Tiana, perplexed, departs the location, hating herself for what occurred, not only to her but also to her teacher. The teacher, however, stops her and tells her that he will teach her one more thing: never forget who she is and where she came from. He busts out laughing yet again, leaving Tiana to not take him seriously. Finally, Tiana walks towards the academy's exit, and as she does so, she awakens from her dream about her past. She missed her past, but she had to face reality. Similarly, we witness Nick's other pals waking up from their dreams, feeling a little let down by their previous lives, which they had enjoyed. Even Nick had dreams about his girlfriend and how happy he was with her. The peculiar thing was that they were all dreaming about their pasts, courtesy of Mop's use of his telepathic spell to discover more about his new companion's pasts. They all then congregate at the same restaurant, where Mop teaches them how to converse through telepathy. They decide to put their new ability to the test by going to a labyrinth to confront an orc, where Mop demonstrates his amazing power and combat skills by slaying it with his bare hands, employing a multiplication technique that drains the magic of the other group members. Mop then describes how he uses his powers and discloses that he learned them from a swordsman who exploited him in the past. Nick praises him for what he has done and proposes they go out to lunch. Tiana and Zem, on the other hand, decline the invitation because they wish to pursue their hobbies. The others follow Nick to the restaurant, where he was abandoned by his ex-girlfriend. However, he resolves to let go of the past and joins the others for a wonderful lunch. What Nick didn't anticipate was to see his ex-girlfriend Claudine inside, accompanied by another guy she was duping and exploiting for money. Nick interrupts their talk to uncover Claudine's deception, and when she is discovered, she becomes enraged and storms away. Thanks to Nick, the guy learns he's being used as a cash cow. Then Nick and his friends go about their business and order dinner. Following that, they reconvene with everyone to discuss a new mission in which they will collect some very expensive herbs from the market to be utilized to produce medications and poison. Claudine, on the other hand, arrives on the scene with one of her co-workers to make Nick's life miserable. But he keeps his cool and reveals to Claudine's henchman, Leon, that she was trying to gather money to flee the Iron Tiger's gang. As a result, Claudine's henchman becomes agitated and orders Nick to go outside and address the problem like a man. Nick accepts Leon's challenge, and they exit the restaurant. When Nick is poised to fight, Leon alters his demeanor totally, and apologizes to him for his previous behavior. He also thanks Nick for preventing Claudine from robbing another man, as this had been her pattern for some time and the other members of the group were already aware of it. Leon, on the other hand, tries to defend her activities by claiming that the group has been going through some difficult economic circumstances, which led her to dupe guys into bringing her precious stuff in order to generate money. But because she has so many enemies, Leon informs Nick that he can do whatever he wants with her. Furthermore, he offers Nick a tempting proposition that entails stealing from members of his own organization. Nick is enraged by this remark and hits Leon, informing him that he would never betray his buddies. So Leon prepared to fight Nick, but Nick simply avoided him and got control. However, one of Leon's lackeys arrives and strikes Nick from behind, cornering him. Curran appears and protects Nick, along with the rest of the group, as well as the old woman and her aide, who arrive on the scene. Leon challenges Nick once more, but this time to a bare-knuckle fight, leaving everyone bewildered by this strange proposition. So the time has come for the challenge to begin. But first, the elderly woman and her assistant explain how it will work. They clarify that the fight will include both math and physical warfare, with a total of 10 rounds. Each round will finish when one of the teams completes the math problem, which means that when the duel begins, one of the two teams must answer the math problem or else the war would go on indefinitely. Furthermore, as the rounds proceed, the difficulty of the math questions will rise. So she pulls out a box containing papers listing the names of the people in charge of answering the arithmetic problems. Curran is chosen for the first round. She becomes very concerned, though, because she fears she will be unable to manage the math. So Nick offers her some words of encouragement. Claudine is in charge of solving the arithmetic problems for Leon's squad. As a result, Nick's crew will spend the next 3 days learning mathematics in order to assist Curran with the work. Zem, on the other hand, is preoccupied since he prefers to hang out with a female at the pub. Finally, the night before the battle, Nick gathers everyone, stating that Leon and his crew are likely to have a lot of experience in this type of duel. Otherwise, there would be no logical reason for Leon to challenge him. If such is not the case, he suggests that they may have a plan to cheat. As a result, they dispatch Zem to acquire information, which is why he attended the girls' club. Aside from drinking a lot, he took advantage of the chance to ask a lot of questions regarding Leon's organization. He learned Leon's crew had gems with which they could communicate between themselves thanks to one of the girls. Nick's group, on the other hand, is unconcerned because they have a strategy in place to deal with the situation. Nick tells Curran that she should behave normally and put what they learned throughout training to use. They will send her a signal when the time is right. So the duel begins the following day. Curran and Claudine are given math problems, and the first round begins. Curran works hard to answer the questions correctly since she is concerned about Nick receiving the penalty. She may have let her excitement get the best of her, and she answers everything too soon. When she indicated that she was finished, the judges began to evaluate her. Because of Curran's haste in responding, she made numerous errors, resulting in Nick receiving the penalty of absorbing a hit from his opponent without resistance. The second round begins, and while Nick manages to escape Leon's blows, Curran concentrates as hard as she can to avoid making the same mistake. However, time runs out, and they must analyze the responses. Curran loses against Claudine again, forcing Nick to absorb another blow. Curran rises up, extremely concerned, and says she can't go on since it bothers her that Nick is being hit as a result of her folly. However, Nick attempts to console her with words and eventually encourages her to continue. Furthermore, Nick and his friends are waiting for the appropriate moment to launch a counterattack against Leon and his crew, who are cheating. So, without further ado, we begin the third round. While Curran concentrates on her task, Nick begins to buy time. Nick's squad, on the other hand, begins looking for magical traces to detect the signal of the communication gems that Leon's team is allegedly using to help Claudine with the arithmetic problems, as this is how they are cheating. Tiana begins the first part of the plan after acquiring the essential information. She briefly stops the fight to inform the judges that the combat is really boring and that it would be preferable if they solved all of the challenges at once rather than in rounds. The entire audience agrees, and the judge gives over all of the exams for Curran and Claudine to answer simultaneously. They give the candidates the go-ahead to begin tackling the tasks. Curran concentrates and begins focusing on her responsibilities, while Claudine becomes apprehensive. She starts talking to the person who will assist her in answering the questions. However, her communication with the magic stone serves as the perfect bait for Tiana to use her abilities to identify the magic signal, effectively pinpointing the man who is supporting Claudine. Tiana carries out the second half of the plan, fleeing with Nick's other associates to apprehend this man. Nick sees that his strategy is working and decides to buy some time against Leon. He inquires of Leon about the location of his other teammate, as his absence is odd. Leon becomes worried and begins to make excuses to cover for his teammate. While explaining things to Nick, he realizes what's going on and assumes Nick has already worked it out. He tries to signal to Claudine that he needs to hurry since he has a horrible feeling, but the elderly woman warns Leon that talking with her is considered cheating. Things become tight for Leon's team, while Claudine becomes increasingly upset since her teammate is not providing her with answers quickly enough. Tiana and the others soon uncover him and catch him, putting him before the judge to form their own conclusions. This is how they dismantled Leon's team's plan, and Leon, Claudine, and her co-worker were promptly detained. Claudine becomes even more angry as a result, and she eventually bursts into tears. Later that night, Nick and his friends go out to eat and talk about what happened. Curran had no idea what was going on throughout the duel, but her focus was critical for the others to carry out the plan smoothly. However, the group is eating and celebrating their victory. On the other hand, we see Leon going to be interviewed by one of the guards who arrested him. Leon, on the other hand, summons a sword with which he evidently made a pact and wants to use it to flee. In a different scene, several days have elapsed since the math duel, and Nick's group, having won, has taken some time off to enjoy their winnings. Each of them spent their money as they pleased, but Tiana went to a casino with Nick and Kazuna since the latter wanted to eat a fantastic ice cream that was allegedly sold there. Kazuna arrived too late, and the ice cream was already sold out, so they had no choice but to continue roaming about as Tiana finished her business. Leon emerges outside the casino at that time, intent on exacting vengeance on Nick. He does, however, appear physically different than previously since he transformed into the terrible monster they are now witnessing by creating a bond with the sword. Leon then enters the casino, using his sense of smell to trail Nick's scent. Despite everyone's attempts, he is unstoppable. He continues on his journey and comes upon Tiana, threatening her with death unless she leads him to Nick. Tiana, on the other hand, is considerably clever and takes advantage of the fact that cats are easily distracted. She deceives Leon, briefly attacking him in order to flee. Unfortunately, this was insufficient because his developed form allows him to repair his wounds quickly. As the situation for Tiana worsens, Leon raises his sword once more, ready to end her life. Nick arrives with the bonded sword just in time to stop Leon's attack. What Nick didn't expect was for his sword to be able to converse with Leon's sword, indicating that these two swords have a centuries-long rivalry. This causes Leon's sword to transfer all of its power to him, transforming him into a much larger and more powerful monster. Given the circumstances, Nick needed to develop a link with Tiana in order to gain enough power to fight Leon. Nonetheless, Leon lost control of his body and began destroying everything, which he didn't want to do because, in his conscience, he just intended to upset Nick for a short time but ended up causing a lot of harm to innocent people. When he tries to recover control of the situation in his body, the sword steps in, as it has a personal beef with Nick's sword that it wants to settle right now. But Leon refuses to continue harming people for the sake of vengeance. As a result, he and his own sword begin arguing. Meanwhile, Nick takes advantage of the situation by encasing Leon in an ice prison and then launching spears at him. However, this is insufficient to deter him because the sword has granted him great power, which he uses to break free from the ice prison. Leon no longer wants to do any more harm at that point and begins to regret everything he has done. To prevent inflicting further harm on him, Nick employs an anti-magic attack with casino cards. That's how they were able to neutralize the sword's power and restore Leon to his regular state. He ends up on the floor, surrounded by guards, but grateful to Nick for assisting him in breaking free from that change. Regardless, he ends up back in jail. A little while later, Nick pays him a visit to notify him that Tiana has sealed his prized sword. He tells Leon not to be too downhearted because, despite his mayhem, no innocent lives were lost. Nick bids farewell and departs after these words. The following day, we find the survivors group gathered again. Mop becomes enthralled while reading a story about the Stepping Man, a phantom who kidnaps children at night, and shows it to Zem. He claims that this ghost can fly and is in Labyrinth City. Everyone is listening, but Curran is the first to speak up, recommending that they apprehend him because he's a nasty guy. Nick cautions them not to believe everything they read. Female and chases her into a dark alley. To his amazement, she is drawn inside a house by something unusual, as reflection, so he begins attacking it. Nick is unable to see it, but he no longer doubts Stepping Man's existence. They transport the girl to a safe house maintained by Red. Nick begins questioning the girl, to which she just responds that it's Stepping Man and her mother wasn't wrong. She describes how her mother attempted to catch him every night but ended up in the hospital due to this creature. The conversation turns emotional, and the survivors, having seen Stepping Man with their own eyes, side with the girl's mother. The girl unexpectedly begs Zem to be her apprentice. Nick steps in, but Zem reminds the girl that she must be at least 15 years old and must train till then, advising her not to endanger herself. Mop, enraged, declares that she intends to beat up Stepping Man for failing him by not being a kidnapper, and that she will catch him herself. Stepping Man has inflicted so much harm on Riene, the little girl, that the others have joined him. Their survivors arrive at garbage collection, the city's most hazardous district. They come upon a gang before leaving, to which he says that he has no opportunities in there and can't sleep quietly, which they don't understand. Curran, on the other hand, believes he understands and offers him some soothing herbs in exchange for the knowledge, imploring him not to use drugs any longer. Just as they're about to depart, the man admits that Hale is a runner and that if they spot him, he'll vanish. His presence, woman. Curran informs him of the monetary reward for his capture, and Hale attempts to flee through a window. Mop has unexpectedly appeared behind him. They're about to take him to the guild when a man appears and inquires about his patient, Snalgava. He inquires about their identities because they do not appear to be ordinary people. However, Nick remarks that he does not appear to be a typical priest. Nonetheless, he requests that they reveal the crime Hale committed. When Nick informs him that Hale has done everything except murder, Nalgava grudgingly agrees to let them take him because he cures ailments rather than actions. He does, however, want to finish his task before they go because Hale has the yellow demon disease and will be gone for a long time. However, Nick does not believe it is a good idea, to which Zem responds that they may sentence him to death or that he may live a peaceful life in prison. However, Hale requests that they remain silent and transport him away. Zem realizes Nalgava is a priest and wonders why he's there when he could choose to work in a field where he could identify serious illnesses. Nalgava, on the other hand, says he wants to go back to it because he's sick of what he's doing now. Mop brings up Stepping Man, but Nalgava maintains he has never met. The following day, they receive Hale's prize as well as information regarding Stepping Man. However, the information is made up of confession letters from people who have seen him, and none of them speak ill of him. The bartender proposes that they concentrate on actual assignments rather than legends and rumors. They're not hunting for the fabled Stepping, but rather someone who looks like him. The bartender suggests simply looking for unusual people who speak to youngsters. This is when he discovers all. He asks her what she did 2 nights ago, and she claims to be being probed, but she decides to answer and tells him everything she did. With the night, the survivors are on the lookout for Stepping Man. Nonetheless, Zem went out to identify neighbors who had restored their roofs, as damage could lead them to Stepping Man. Nick was taken aback by what they discovered. The hint sent them back to trash pickup, so they ran across the gatekeeper again, who inquired about their progress. The information that struck them was that they had discovered the body of a child, but the man couldn't provide any other information, not even if the child's hair was long or short. The survivors felt goosebumps down their spines as a result of this. The survivors and Olivia are now scrutinizing the body of a villain's victim, and they discover nothing remarkable about it. They discover King's gem. When they break it, the spell on the girl's body falls away, revealing her scars and bruises. They discovered she had the yellow demon sickness by peering into her eyes. Back at Red's, they discover a note from the parents detailing the disappearance of their daughter, who went missing a month ago. It appears to be the one they observed recently. The Order of the Sun discovered her in garbage collection, so Mop knows it's where Stepping Man goes. They decide to return the body to her parents before seeking vengeance on her. Without further ado, the survivors must put a stop to illusion. It all started with the finding of the girl who had been treated for yellow fever in the trash collection. Nalgava had been performing tests on children in order to find a treatment for the condition by utilizing garbage collection as a laboratory. The disease, which is primarily spread sexually, killed Nalgava's daughter, although the girl most likely caught it by handling the blood of an infected person while imitating her father, who worked as a doctor. Does not believe Nalgava's actions are justified. Mr. Nalgava is respected as a priest, and his previous manner of life inspired Zem, but he now questions him. Nalgava illustrates that every human being has 2 sides and demonstrates which one benefits them the most. He accepts accountability for both sides, regardless of his motivation. Zem feels he must be punished for the killing of a 10-year-old girl named Martha Canning, whom he had previously seen. They had handed the girl's body to her bereaved parents, who were distraught since they didn't know what had killed her. Their neighbors and customers were in tears as well. Zem informs Nalgava that there are no ordinary children because everyone, including his daughter, is cherished. Zem reminds him that they should care about people because they were once priests. Nalgava, on the other hand, admits to being a lousy priest who never intended to rescue anyone and exposes his darkest sin. Despite his desire for something different, Nalgava ended up giving many individuals back their human lives while working in garbage collection. That's what makes life exciting, according to Zem. At that point, Nalgava comments that Zem is one of those people who continuously changes his face, and they both chuckle. However, when he chuckles, a monster bursts, instead knocking Tiana aside. Meanwhile, Zem and Nick band together to combine their powers. The monster, however, keeps Olivia from fleeing by sealing her in a bubble where she may perish owing to the low temperature and air pressure. Zem wishes to save her, but the sword warns him that stepping on the bubble will render him helpless. The creature then attempts to pursue Zem, who uses his hands to halt the sword. Meanwhile, Olivia accepts her fate and bids farewell to the others. The bubble loses strength as the monster grows preeminent. The monster is about to declare triumph when Zem's sword slashes through its white mask, shattering it. The monster acknowledges defeat and flees the scene, but not before wreaking havoc. Except for Nalgava's agony, and she starts to feel better. Nick encourages him to continue, and they say their goodbyes. Turn to the place, and Zem is overcome with emotion. He felt he was used to death, but Nick reminded him that no one should ever become accustomed to it. Curran also offers him words of comfort. Zem believes he was able to soothe Nalgava in his final moments. Olivia, on the other hand, urges them not to relax too much because the person with the white mask has escaped and they aren't sure who is influencing them. This person is dangerous since they are carrying prohibited weapons. Skepticism, and asks her to divulge her genuine identity. Shanna and Curran consent to Olivia joining the group. Olivia has no choice but to accept, but not before revealing her true identity, that she is a member of the fight program against elemental demon gods. In other words, she is the War Sword, as her product and project names suggest. Watch this next video. See you on the next one.